Welcome to Pure Mind Magic, the show to evolve your mind. Our mind is the most powerful thing we have, but no one teaches us how to use it. When we find out how, we're ready to create magic in life and in business. Learn real mindset secrets from brilliant minds around the world to change your mindset and income level forever. With every decision you make, you create your future. What is your next move? Now, welcome your host, international magician, speaker, and podcast performance consultant, Jennifer S. Royal.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Pure Mind Magic. When you are brand new to this show, I would be really happy if you could hit the subscribe or follow me button. With that, you won't miss any of the upcoming episodes. For today, I have prepared a very special interview for you and have a really thrilling guest. His name is Dr. Mac, and we will talk about the magic of music. Dr. Mac actually is a singer, songwriter, and producer. He already has written and produced more than 100 songs. He especially does that for children, and Dr. Mac is really a lot into brain science, explaining which effects listening to music can have on our brain, like enhancing our performance, concentration, and everything else we are doing, even looking into relationship and parenting by listening to the right music with the right content. We will explore all of that in this upcoming episode. And also he will tell us about the elementary school musical he has put together. And what is really interesting, we will also talk about how to recycle relationships. Have you ever heard of this before? I'm not, but Dr. Mac explains how we can do that and what we can do with our brain while listening to music. Here is for you, live on the show, Dr. Mac. Hi, Dr. Mac. Welcome to Pure Mind Magic.
Hello, Jennifer. Glad to be here.
So nice that you are my guest today, and I myself have to admit that I'm really curious about our topic today, to dive into brain science and especially what music can do to enhance the brain and in general for kids and adults. So I have a long list of questions. Before I ask you all of them, please, Dr. Mac, introduce yourself to our audience.
All right. Well, thank you so much. So my name is Dr. Mac, but I'm also known as Don McManus, PhD. I am a clinical psychologist specializing in work with kids and families, and I'm the author of a couple of books on parenting. And in addition to my psychological work, that's sort of one hat that I wear. I am a professional children's songwriter, and all the way back to being the music director and songwriter for JJ the Jet Plane, which was a animated cartoon on PBS for years, and then since then I've also been writing a number of songs for a variety of different projects. So I've sort of melded the two worlds that I'm so fascinated with, and that's the world of psychology and what do we know about the brain and its applications to parenting and to relationships, and also to give kids tools and ideas for how they can get along better through the magic of music. So it's both psychologically focused is my biggest focus, and then how music can play such a huge part in helping people learn new concepts and put them into action.
Wow, that is just amazing. And you already mentioned it, that there is this magic of music, and I found that on your website too, and obviously that resonates very well with me. So can you describe where there is something like magic to music?
What's the magic? Okay. Well, there's just been a ton of research on this, and we could say that music isn't necessary for human survival, but something inside of all of us craves it. I mean, there is not when anthropologists look at various cultures, there's not a culture that doesn't have music as the backbone of a lot of how stories are told and how people connect with each other. In the brain research, we know that it releases endorphins. That's that feel-good kind of chemical, and makes us feel happy and energized. And it actually lights up the same or activates the same centers of the brain that are activated or stimulated by food and sex, if you can believe that. The specific parts, the three main parts of the brain that are activated with music are language and hearing and rhythmic motor control. One of the most fascinating things that I have discovered in the last 5 years of research is that if you're actually listening to a song, your motor cortex in the brain, which is sort of the movement part of the brain, it lights up as if you're dancing to a song. If you're attending to a song, your motor cortex is lighting up just as if you're dancing to it. So, boy, what a powerful thing. So just in general, it helps people feel more cooperative with each other, more creative. And, when we talk about the comparison of different countries, it's the only thing, music is the only thing worldwide that we spend more on than prescription drugs. So that's why I say it's in effect almost magical medium for learning and retaining information. So one of the examples I use, I don't know if it's true in your culture in Scandinavia or wherever, but in the United States, that whole A, B, C, D, E, F, G, when people are going through the alphabet and they're filing things, they actually sing that song in their head almost invariably, because you remember things just like you most of us remember songs from when we were 4 and 5 years old, and we remember the lyrics to those songs. And the reason we do is because there's ways that it's activating different aspects or different elements of the brain at the same time. So that's the magic.
Very good answer to my question. So, Dr. Mack, I remember back in school when I did my A levels, I was really fascinated by speed reading, super learning, deep learning, mnemotechniques, and all that stuff. And I came across that it is really great for your brain, and that it is easier to learn when you listen to a lot of classic music, and that this classic music also kind of rewires your brain and it's easier to learn. Is this true?
Well, I'll tell you what's true and what's not so true. There was this study that came out about 15 years ago, and they called it the Mozart effect, because what they found is that when people are listening to Mozart while they're doing like math, that there was an enhanced capacity for learning. Well, it took about another 7 years, and some more research came out and said, no, it's not all about Mozart. It's not about classical music. It's any music that has a positive feel to it, and that has more major chords than minor chords. So that's that kind of happy feel to the music, rather than, sort of the droll minor tones and that kind of thing. So, I haven't specifically done research on the learning ability that's enhanced by the songs that I've written, but what we do know is that there's definitely a degree to which music can really facilitate learning. I would say that there's an exception to that if you're trying to focus on stuff that's kind of hard and new, and you're listening to rap music or things that are kind of way more harsh, then it's probably not going to work, although there's no research that I'm aware of about that kind of comparison.
Okay, I see. So let's look into another field. I also read a couple of articles that said that when people are listening to music while they are working out, that what they do, their performance increases by about 30%. Same effect when they are out running. They are capable of delivering a better performance just by listening to music. As I said, up to 30%. What do you think about that?
I think that's great. I'm not sure that we know why that is. We know that when people are doing music together, there's this sync that happens in people's brains, and that connection between people's brains is in part because we start to breathe with one another. And it's that breathing with one another that, I sometimes playfully call it a conspiracy, because conspiracy means actually with breath. The word spiritos is breath in Greek and that kind of thing. So I say, well, you give your kids a conspiracy and sing with them and that kind of thing. Exercise alone has dramatic effects on all kinds of things in terms of, giving us major neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, in addition to endorphins. I would imagine then that if you're actually exercising and also listening to music, you're sort of getting a double whammy there. That's kind of like the best of all worlds.
Yeah, I was about to say that. So this would be like the perfect natural drug, right? To combine listening to your favorite music and working out.
Exactly. Well, you see a lot of people doing that these days. So the only thing I would say, though, as an additional thing that's a little bit a cul-de-sac or an offshoot of this discussion, is that people actually do better if they're exercising outdoors than if they're indoors. And I think there's something about nature, or green, or exposing yourself to the natural environment that's also a quite powerful influence. So I don't necessarily advocate, if people are starting to exercise, well, just throw on some headset and go to the gym and work out on the treadmill, because there may be even more enhancements from being in nature. A lot of us are a bit too nature deprived, and trees are really important healers.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Mack, can you give us some insights on what is happening inside our brains while we are listening to music?
Well, it would be that same answer that there's all these areas of the brain that light up. The endorphins, the areas of the brain that are like learning and memory and meaning formation, retaining information, and that kind of thing. So that basically covers it. I mean, some people say, "Oh, there's over a dozen areas of the brain," and I don't know. I think that's a stretch. It's a little bit of a stretch from my looking into literature on this.
Okay. And what's so interesting about you is that you know all these studies and the psychology behind music, but you are also active as a singer, songwriter, and producer. And you did write and produce already more than 100 songs, especially for kids. So let's have a look on what can music do for kids, for parenting, and what did you inspire to come up with more than 100 songs?
Yeah. Well, there's about 53 or 54 of them on a website called Happy Kids Songs. And after I finished my work with JJ the Jet Plane, I decided, wow, I just feel so inspired. I mean, it's the kind of thing that wakes me up in the night, Jennifer, and here's another song popping in my head, and I almost feel like I'm pregnant and I have to have a baby. So that's the fun part about this. It's been part of my own spiritual path that I am opening up to being able to create in a way like I never could have imagined. So that's been the really fun part for me. But a specialty of mine it came about actually from reading a book and starting to understand all this new research about what we call social and emotional learning. And that is all about giving kids tools for communication, conflict resolution, how to deal with bullies, who doesn't have that problem, how to express feelings in constructive ways, how to chill when somebody's, getting your goat, how to maintain positive thinking. So these are all skills. These are things that children can learn. And what we found is that, and literally thousands of studies on this now, is that if children can learn these social and emotional skills, it really, really helps their learning process. It helps them feel happier. And the bottom line, one of my cute little aphorisms is happy kids learn better. So this gets us into brain research very quickly. And what we know is that in the brain, we've got this little thing that's the size and shape of an almond. And it's called the amygdala. It's it's the center of the emotional brain, and the amygdala is basically it's an alarm system. If you were to have a trauma, like, you have a car accident, well, your amygdala starts to fire, just as if there's a bear attacking you. Okay, so that's what some people know as the sympathetic nervous system that lights up, and it makes you experience danger, danger, danger. I need to do something. So what happens when kids are upset? They've been teased in the playground, for example. They come in, they're trying to attend to what the teacher's doing on the blackboard. The teacher's teaching them how much 3 + 4 is, or whatever the deal is. That child's capacity for learning is hugely affected by the emotional stress they've just experienced. Same thing with a child that goes to school and his parents are fighting, or his little brother is getting in his case, or, just name it, just run through all the different challenges that we all have as human beings trying to deal with this brain that allowed us to survive all these many years, in terms of all the way back to prehistoric times, to how do we deal with these feelings? How do we deal with amygdala? And one of the terms used is flooding. And flooding means that your emotions are sort of getting the best at you, and your capacity for learning is down the tubes, your ability to connect, to be loving, to be able to listen to somebody else or to learn. So bottom line is social and emotional skills are hugely important. And when programs have been implemented, as an example, into classrooms, into school classrooms, especially but also in the upper school range, what happens is that even though you're taking time away from academics, academic scores improve. You're taking time away from academics to teach kids about how to get along with themselves, how to have positive thinking, how to resolve conflict, how to deal with feelings, and the scores go up. And hundreds of studies have shown that now. So I sometimes like to use the analogy of computer memory. When kids are preoccupied by emotional stuff or whatever, they have far less memory or attention available for learning. So that's it in a nutshell. So almost all of my songs have lessons involved with them, but they're not sort of like slam it home kind of lessons. They're stories, they're story songs, and most of them are sung by children's superstars here in Santa Barbara, where I live. So that is a very long-winded answer to your question.
Yeah, but very fascinating. So you already mentioned your website, and you said that there are 3 free songs for everyone interested, as well as an online webinar where you explain everything on an even deeper level. So can you give us some more insights here?
Sure. So yeah, the songs in this, there are 3 free songs out of the 50 or so, and that's at happykidsongs.com. And so, yeah, that's how people can get in touch with that. And I just say a couple more things about it, and that is that that the songs include a variety of different styles, because what's really cool as a songwriter is I get to kind of dabble into rap and into rock and into pop and into country, and so and what's really beautiful for kids is that they love contrast. And what captures the brain's attention in the real world is basically when you see or notice change, that's when you take notice. The brain sort of dulls out when you're seeing or experiencing the same thing. I have a beautiful painting in my office, but I hardly ever look at it. But if somebody were to turn it upside down or put a new painting up, I'd be immediately attentive to that. So the songs are very specifically designed to be, number one, really sophisticated, like adult style of music. I'm very blessed to have the same arranger and composer that works with me after I've written the songs, and this person takes the songs to the next level. And he's someone who does the same for Kenny Loggins and Michael McDonald and some of the superstars that are, being close to Hollywood here is quite a blessing. So kids love to hear other kids sing, and a lot of children's music these days is it's filled with an adult singer, that kind of thing, and sing-songy guitar. And I think that for years people have underestimated the sophistication that kids really. I mean, kids are growing up pretty sophisticated these days, and they don't want to listen to stuff that's not really well produced and has these kinds of stylistic variations and that kind of thing. And they can also learn about music too, because there's different instruments which are featured in the songs in terms of instrumental solos and that kind of thing. So kids can learn about what's the difference between a trumpet and a violin and that kind of stuff. So the other thing that you mentioned, if I can dive into it, is that there is a webinar that I have. The webinar is not connected with the songs. The webinar is actually for a separate project. And this particular webinar can be found at strongwilledchild.com. And strong-willed is hyphenated. And what I've been doing is, in my, quote, spare time, I have specialized in trying to help parents deal with kids who are strong-willed or kids who have behavior problems. And so what I've done is I've put together a free webinar that's in connection with a nonprofit that I direct here in Santa Barbara. And this webinar is pretty high tech. I mean, it's a PowerPoint presentation, but there's a lot of fun kind of cartoons and ways of helping parents to understand some important concepts about brain research and brain science that have applications for how you want to parent. So that's where the webinar is.
Great. So thanks for sharing that. And I was wondering, because I'm really curious, Dr. Mack, can you say what's the content mostly in this kids' songs?
In the kids' songs? Well, the content really is those social emotional learning tools. So I have a song called Stand Up. And this is a hit all over the country. Stand up. So what does that mean? Okay, so here's the research on bullying. What we know makes a difference. Well, here's what we know about bullying is that it doesn't take place in front of adults. This is stuff that happens on the playground. It happens when the teacher's out of the room. It happens at lunchtime. It happens when kids aren't being observed, of course, because they're a little bit sneaky about how they do that. And what fuels bullying is for there to be laughter on the part of other kids. So if I were to tease you and all the other kids around you are saying, Jennifer, and it's like, and everybody laughs, and so now there's payoff for the bully. And there's what we call the bystander effect. So a bystander is somebody who's kind of hanging out with those kids, and the bystander is the kid who might or might not laugh or whatever, jump into the thing about, how they're treating someone, teasing them or bullying them. And what we know then is if we can just get bystanders to put a stop to it. Hey, that's not okay. That's not funny. Just to be able to interrupt the thing, walk away, don't pay attention to the bully, because the bully is looking for attention and status, and they're getting it in all the negative ways. But so this song called Stand Up is, stand up and speak your mind. Go stand up and say, it's never okay to be unkind. Enough's enough. Let's draw the line. It'd do a world of good if everybody could stand up for each other. Stand up. So that's a really triumphant kind of chorus. And so what I'm trying to do then is make it a really kind of fun, and there's a whole rapper. I got a rapper singing most of the song. So it's kind of a rap song, and it shifts into this other issue around how to stand up and what to do and that kind of stuff. So that's just one example. Another example of a song is really specifically geared toward what happens when there is a problem between two kids. And sometimes it's not bullying, it's just that two kids aren't getting along, and there's this whole Mean Girls thing that's happening with a lot of with second and third grade kids. I've done school consultations where I go and I facilitate groups, and the kids are, picking on one kid a week in a random basis. It's like, oh my gosh, you kidding me? So how can people be so cruel? So when there are rubs in a relationship, or between siblings, or even between couples, what we have done, my wife and I, who is also a psychologist like myself, we've poured through the literature and we figured out, well, here's a really good formula for how you get people to sit down and talk stuff out. And what we know from the brain research is that if I feel understood by you, you're not going to judge me for what I'm feeling. My feelings are what they are, rather than you're fighting with me about this, that, and the other thing. But if I say, that makes me feel sad. Well, if you have the ability to listen to me, my amygdala, which I mentioned before, that settles down. I feel better. I feel more connected to you. I feel more like, hey, let's start a new slate now. Let's kind of recycle the relationship rather than just tossing it in the trash can. So I sometimes do lectures for kids, and I'll say, so how many of you guys know how to recycle bottles? And they raise their hand. What about cans? What about newspaper? Yeah, oh yeah, they recycle everything. How many of you know how to recycle a relationship? And they go, what? Recycle a relationship? What does that mean? Put them in the blue bin? No. We're talking about, okay, so you're upset with somebody, your feelings, they made you mad, you're sad about something that happened or whatever, and you're able to sit down with them and talk this out. So coming back to your question, this song called Talk It Out is a template for how it becomes a cool thing to talk stuff out. And that's a song that we actually used a tango to present the material with, because that particular style of music fit this sort of lyrical ideas. So we wrote that song as a tango, and it's called Talk It Out. So those are a couple examples. A third one, if I'll throw in one additional one, is that we know that people from all walks of life, this is true, just as true for adults as kids, is when people are too hard on themselves or perfectionistic, or they have a lot of negative self-talk, then what happens, again, back to the brain, is that if I have a negative thought, it will automatically, in a small to medium way, it will activate insulin and cortisol in my blood system. And those are stress chemicals. So we know that even to have a negative thought causes changes in the brain that have really important implications. If you have negative thinking over years and years, you are affecting your immune system, you're affecting your organ functioning, you're affecting, people who get depressed or anxious because of their negative thinking. They can have all kinds of problems in their relationships as well. So I've got actually 3 different songs that one is called Go Away Bad Thoughts. And then a more recent one is 2 deep breaths and a positive thought. And they're very fun ways of entertaining people about how to take their negative thinking patterns and try and turn them around.
That is so interesting, especially recycling relationships. I think I have never heard this term before, but makes a lot of sense for kids and for adults and even for entrepreneurs in business to sit down and really talk things out. So that was a cool inspiration, Dr. Mack. And before we started recording, you mentioned that you have let's say, a magical event coming up, an elementary school musical. Can you tell us a story about this musical, and where can people go to visit and enjoy the musical?
Right. Well, I'll toot my horn on a little bit. I just won 3 major awards for the musical, and the productions are starting to happen, and I have a group that's probably going to be taking this musical and putting it into lots of different elementary schools. But it's about 65 minutes long, and it includes a really cool hunt. There's a sick dog at the side of the playground, and the kids go over, and oh my gosh, the dog needs the help of a vet, and it's from a kid who owns the dog, who's from a poor family. So these kids are off on this huge adventure to try and help the sick dog. And there's one kid who loses their wits, and there's a funny little song about they lose their wits and they need them. and another little girl has downloaded an iGadget, which is this thing that Apple hasn't even produced yet. She's downloaded it from her mother's secret place in her computer, and so the kids play with this iGadget and they travel to the moon and the ocean, whatever, and they're looking for the money to pay for a vet. And I don't want to mess up the punchline for the whole story, but it's basically an adventure story with 8 main characters, including one off stage who's the voice of this iGadget, who I'm calling Cheery, not Siri, and this is like an English sounding guy. And so it's a really kind of fun and entertaining way for kids to learn the same kinds of themes that I was talking. That song that I mentioned before called Stand Up is one of the songs, and also that song, 2 Deep Breaths and a Positive Thought. There's a free video that I would like to have people look at, and that's called, the website is elementarymusical.com. That's just elementarymusical.com. And there's actually a free video of one of the songs that has been highly produced. And it's a song called What Can We Lose by Loving? So if people want to go check out that song or download things to play, boy, that would be great if more people could just know about and put this thing together in theaters everywhere. I think it could help to make a difference in this world of ours.
Very good. So I'm also curious now about the musical. That sounds very interesting. And thanks, Dr. Mack, for not spoilering. So how the story ends in the 65 minutes. I'm sure there will be a lot going on.
A lot to learn, yeah.
And I have a personal question for you now to wrap this interview up, because obviously your life is really driven by music, and you mentioned that you won awards and you produce so many songs and still do, and you also write them. So obviously there is a ton of creativity involved, and also being in the flow and coming up with all this content, because most people are just consuming content, but then they stop instead of like transforming what they learned, all the inspiration they took in, and really transforming it, bringing it out into the world, like becoming a creator. And you, Dr. Mack, are really this high-end creator, if I can say it like that. So can you give us some tips on how you incorporate music in your all-day life, and maybe what can the listeners take away when they are entrepreneurs, business people, parents? How can they include music in the all-day life to make them feel better, to have smoother relationships, to be more successful, just in general? What are, let's say, your best 3 tips?
Best 3 tips about how to put more music in your life. Well, it's to sing with people. There's research that shows that it's really helpful to play, any kind of musical instrument. Share music with other people. Support people who are producing music in the world, because oftentimes, especially in these last 15 years, it is so hard to make a living writing music because people expect it for free. Spotify. I write it can be listened to thousands of times, and I'll make 12 cents because people aren't selling CDs anymore. So I think it's really helpful to support those who are struggling to make a difference in the world through their music.
That's a nice tip.
Yeah.
And to finally wrap this episode up, Dr. Mack, is there anything you can share to leave the audience really inspired for the day, like in a magical mood, maybe a quote you picked up somewhere, or just something else you experienced that really inspired you? And before you do, I wanted to thank you so much for coming to Pure Mind Magic today and being my guest, sharing all these insights on music and how music can influence our brain in a positive way, and also what music can do for kids and creating this amazing musical for elementary school. So thank you so much for all of that.
Thank you, Jennifer. My pleasure. So my final thought, this is probably one of the most important things that I share with clients all the time, whether it's adults or kids. The story is that we've discovered that there are millions of mirror neurons in the brain. We have 80 billion neurons, and millions of them are mirror neurons. And it was originally discovered with monkeys and then with human beings years later. But the latest research shows the following. You take any two people and you put them in a room, and their brains are constantly fueling and feeling what the other brain is doing. And researchers are now saying, these are neuroscientists who say that emotions are contagious. So one of the most important things that we can do to help others as parents, to help people in our lives who are friends or coworkers or whatever, is to take care of ourselves. And I don't mean that in a selfish way, but I mean in terms of getting enough exercise, getting enough sleep, learning about how to deal with feelings, being able to heal ourselves through whatever self-soothing methods there are. It's so important for us to take care of ourselves on all those fronts. One of the most important gifts we give to anybody is to really take care of ourselves, not in a selfish way, but in a self-serving way, because who we are really so importantly impacts everybody who's around us.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening to today's episode with Dr. Mac, exploring the magic of music on our brain. I hope you liked the episode, and check out all the links below this episode to connect with him and find out more about him and his music producing business. Also, when you liked the episode, go ahead and share it with a friend. Let them know what you learned from listening to this episode. In case you're really into podcasting and would like to grab a podcast listening journal where you can keep track of all the ideas, information, and insights you gain from listening to podcasts, then you can get your copy today from Amazon delivered to your home. The link will be also in the show notes. It is designed by me. I did this because I couldn't find something like that, and I definitely wanted to have one because I'm listening to so many podcasts and I'm learning so much from them. But it is important to write all this information down to not forget it, and also being able to backtrack it later. All for now, I wish you a very magical weekend. Until next time, create some magic.